What's up guys, Intellitech Studios here, and today we'll be doing a full review on the recently recontinued Riccar Vibrance. Now this machine was available in Riccar's lineup and was one of the most popular machines for many years. Recently, it kind of came back into the vacuum news, as after being discontinued for a couple years, it recently was reintroduced by Tacony, the parent company of Riccar and Simplicity, as the Spirit, the Riccar Spirit. So with that in mind, and that machine sort of becoming relevant again, I think it's worth it that we look back and do a full review on the previous generation machine that has now been replaced by the nearly identical Riccar Spirit. This is the older version, the Riccar Vibrance. So now that the Spirit is relatively brand new, that probably means that your vacuum shop may have a couple of these still kicking around, or there's going to be a lot of these available on the secondhand market. And now that the Spirit is available, we know for a fact there's parts, so it might be worth pulling out one of these and rebuilding I said rebuilding wit. I was trying to say rebuilding one and rebuilding it at the same time. Anyways, rebuilding it perhaps may be worth it. Now, the question is, well, this is a full review after all, so is it worth doing that in the first place, or are there better machines out there? This is the question I always try to answer in all my reviews, because my reviews, no pun intended, are not done in a vacuum. I have over 200 machines. I've used premium machines, budget machines, and everything in between, bars, and this machine is no exception. I've used this for a while, on and off, and as I've attempted to do this review a couple times over the last few years, where I've used it for about a week or two and then just shelved it before I really did the review. But now it's time that we finally got it done. So what do I like about this machine first and foremost? Now, as many of you know, there's a certain type of machine that this reminds me of that I'm very much a fan of. In fact, there's about 3 machines that this reminds me of that I'm very much a fan of. Oop, there's a Rocco. We'll wait for him to pass, and then we'll show the other machines. There we go. Just kidding, here he is again. Beep, beep. Beep, beep. Beep, beep. It's baby. It's baby. It's baby. I know everyone complains because I'll sometimes mess with the cat and show my very pretty cat in the middle of the video, or in some cases at the beginning of the video, and you know what? I'm sorry. But this is how you know my reviews are legit, because I have this thing, and okay, he's not shedding very much right now, but there's all this stuff. So that's how you know that I'm able to review a vacuum effectively, because I've got cat hair, and I've also got fine dust, sand, and grit, and all the usual stuff that pops up in carpets, including some cat hairs, but usually he sheds a lot more in the wintertime, but right now in the summer he doesn't shed too much, which is nice. Gives me a little bit of a break. Although you wouldn't be able to tell by looking at my furniture. Anyways, but this machine does remind me of a few machines. Even if I don't grab them right now, you get the idea. It reminds me a lot of the Bissell Power Forces, of the Hoover Wind Tunnels, and of the Panasonic uprights. More so the Panasonics, as this is a very similar-esque design to a Panasonic JetFlow. But in my opinion, the Panasonics, even though they unfortunately aren't available anymore in the US, which effectively means that this comparison is useless because the Riccar is the only one that's still available, I prefer the Panasonics because they have better attachment compatibility. They clean just as well, if not better, and while they're not American made, that definitely was a good selling point of these. They, in my opinion, are just easier to use and a lot friendlier of a design. They feel a lot more refined and more robust than the Riccars. Now, these Riccars are pretty special because they're made in the USA. Now, a lot of these aren't made in the USA anymore, but this one was. In fact, it was made in my home state of Missouri, so that's quite nice. Unlike a lot of other machines, this was actually made in the US. Again, newer Riccars are different, but this one in particular was made in the US. But there's still a couple issues I have with the build quality. The biggest problem that I have with it is not only is it relatively bulky compared to other machines in this type of body style and class, but it also has a couple issues with the cleaner head design. Ow! Sir. But it also has a couple issues with the cleaner head design, and I'll demonstrate that real quick. Now, like a lot of the Dysons, this doesn't have any sort of height adjustment. Instead, it has a floating head design, which isn't great because it means that depending on how far you have this pulled back, that will determine how how much it's making contact with the carpet and what direction it's contacting the carpet, which depending on your type of carpet may mean that it has less of a digging effect into the carpet versus some other types, or depending on what angle you vacuum from. So the height of you very well could determine how well this machine cleans your carpets, which isn't ideal. This thing does have a very stiff and very high quality wooden brush roller, which is great, but there's a huge blind spot on the side and another one here, so edge cleaning is borderline non-existent. And of course, there isn't really much in the way of height adjustment. I feel like Panasonic has taken this design and implemented it a lot better, and of course they did it first. So Panasonics don't have nearly as much of an issue with the cleaner head struggling to maintain contact as this machine does. We also have the fact that when you go to take off the base plate to get to the belt, this entire plastic housing is very sharp and very unfinished. I actually scratched myself pretty badly when I was simply trying to change a belt, which for a vacuum that's designed to be serviceable and last a long time isn't ideal. Even a $50 Bissell Power Force has plastic that is properly smoothed off and machined, is that the right word? Where the edges are smooth and not sharp. On these ones, the edges are rough and sharp on the inside, and you can just kind of tell, even when you rub your hand on this part, you've got this very flat edge right here, although it's not as sharp as what's on the inside underneath the base plate. So it's just not the best design. Now, it is good that it's built very well, and the whole base plate is toolless. Much like a Panasonic, we can pull this switch so that way it clears that screw, and then now we can pop off the base plate with just that. It's a little tricky to pull off, but you can, in fact, pop it off. There's a couple other little tabs that you have to pull as well, which I'm not a big fan of plastic tabs, because no matter how good the tabs are, they can break. And of course, the fact that I have to set down my phone, because I didn't bother putting my phone in a tripod because I didn't think I had to, but apparently I do in order to pull this off, which is not ideal. So there we go. So now I pulled off the base plate. Sorry about that. I probably should have had my tripod. But we can see there's just a lot of sharp plastic here, a lot of stuff that isn't finished very well, and it's very prevalent here. You can tell this is the more baseline model, as there are more expensive models that have a headlight here. This one just has a blank. Again, very Bissell-esque. But the belt and all that is easy to get to, but right here, like, there's a sharp edge right there, which is not good because you can cut yourself on it, and also it can potentially cut up the belt if it rides in a certain direction. As you can see, this particular belt rides off to the side a little bit, which isn't ideal. And again, we've got sharp edges right here, which you need to get your fingers in here in order to replace the belt. So you've got all these sharp edges where you can hurt yourself, or even if you don't cut yourself, you can still scratch yourself pretty badly. And if you wanted to be scratched by something sharp, why would you do it with your vacuum when you can do it by getting a potato? I mean, this can make me all pokey and, make me bleed all the time, but at least this thing is cute. This is not cute. This is just annoying. So this vacuum can cut you while you're changing a belt. This one can cut you when you're trying to play with it, but at least you're getting some cuteness in return and some fluffiness. This is just pain and annoyance. And for no reason, too, because, again, there's vacuums that are $50 brand new, or at least were back in the time this was available, that don't have that problem. So it seems like a very strange design oversight on such an expensive machine that already is a little bit behind the competition because it's missing a lot of features. There's no brush roll shutoff on this model. There's no headlights. The cord is nice and long, as is the hose, but the attachments are a lot less friendly to replacement attachments, unlike Panasonic, which is the next thing I'll touch on. This boy really wants attention, doesn't he? Rocco, I'm trying to do a video. I'm trying to make money so that way I can buy you food. Because foobs cost money. Anyways, so all those sharp corners and everything just makes this very unpleasant to actually work on, despite the fact that it's a very simple machine to work on. So that right there is one of the things I don't like about these. Ow. Sir. Sir. I cannot work without being interrupted. Sir, why must you interrupt? No, no spicy. Why must you interrupt me? You keep making me lose my train of thought. You know I have ADHD. Sir, I am trying to work. I haven't done a video in so long. I need to do one. Sir. Sir, stop it. No. No. Okay, thank you. Now I can't get to the base plate. This is gonna be a long video for no reason, isn't it? No, no spicy, no spicy, no spicy. No spicy. No! I said no spicy. No, don't even think about it. I see the spicy beans. No spicy beans. No spicy beans. No, no, no. No spicy beans. Boop. No spicy beans. Okay, can I get to this now? Okay, thank you. So, as I was alluding to earlier, one of the other no spicy. One of the other issues that I have with this compared to the Panasonics is, like I mentioned earlier, it's wow. Okay, this is I don't know why I'm struggling to get this back on with one hand. Is this also has the issues that, or let me rephrase that. First off, let me get this darn base plate back on. I think it, yeah, so it hooks on from the front. So the front lip hooks on, just like that. And then, just like that, so it hooks on. And then we've got to push this, oh geez. We got to push this down so it lines up there. We got to click that back into place, click that back into place. Not lined up correctly, and then we gotta do that, and now it's back on, and then for some reason that is still there. We go. Okay, so now it's back on. Anyways, so as I mentioned, the attachments on this are very similar to what you find on a Panasonic. Just like a Panasonic, you usually will have, although it's missing on this, you'll usually have an extra extension wand, plus a telescoping one that some Panasonics have. You'll have a combination, did I just say you'll have a combination tool? Yeah, you'll have a combination tool with an upholstery tool that has a brush on it that you can slide off, and a crevice tool that hooks into this, just like you would find on a Bissell. And then, just like a Panasonic, you have a big stretch hose that stretches very far and hooks over the top just like a Panasonic or a Bissell. And then you'll also have this little area right here where you can flip this hose opening out of the way and attach your own hose to it if you don't want to use the stock hose, which most other machines don't have, but these Riccars and the Panasonics have as well. And it's kind of a nice feature if you want to, for example, attach a hose that is not a stretch hose, you want to attach a wire reinforced hose, so that way you can use it more like a canister vacuum instead of like an upright with a stretch hose. So that's an option as well, and it's quite nice. Now, but again, like I said, even though the fitting on this is very similar to the Panasonics, unlike the Panasonics, you can't substitute Bissell or Dyson attachments with it. You're pretty much stuck using the Riccar attachments, because I haven't found any other attachments that fit with this same fitting. To be fair, I haven't really tried that many, but I shouldn't have to go through 10 different styles of attachment fittings to find other ones that fit with this. If anyone knows any alternatives that fit on these, or if I discover any after this review, then I'll add those in the description or the comments. Just that way, if you have one of these, you know what you can use. Of course, Riccar wants you to use the OEM attachments, and you can, of course, get those from any Tacony dealer. And the vast majority of vacuum stores in the United States, which is one positive of this machine, always carry Tacony. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a vacuum store that doesn't carry Tacony. And by Tacony, I mean Riccar and Simplicity, because they're both the same company. So that's going to be the biggest advantage to this machine compared to all the other machines that I'm talking about, is that it's made in the US, so you're whether it's a second hand or not, you're supporting American workers and American manufacturing. And there's also the fact that you have a vast and robust support network for these machines. So servicing these by technicians are usually fairly easy, and this machine is also constantly available, or constantly has parts available, which is great. So those are both really great. And also, if it does play nice with your carpet, whereas it does okay with mine, the cleaning performance on this is also excellent, and the machine is very quiet. I know I'm rambling all over the place, but I just kind of randomly jumped into the positives of the machine. And you also have a very long stretch hose and a very long cord, and this is definitely not going to be a machine. I know I'm pulling back to the performance, but it's one of those things where you're going to really enjoy the performance of this machine if it plays nice with your carpet, which most of the time it still does, even if the mechanism for adjusting the height or the automatic adjustment is a little jank on this. It still does work just fine. And it also has this really strange looking handle, which I hated at first, but after using it for a little bit, it's actually kind of grown on me. It's actually quite comfortable, and it does allow you to use the machine pretty effectively. There's also, I know I'm laying down for this, but there's also a carrying handle right here. Again, very similar to what you'd see on a modern Bissell. And it's actually relatively smooth on the inside, so it's not uncomfortable. So when you're pushing and pulling the machine, it actually is balanced very well, and that is one thing that little pivoting joint is really good for. It's balanced very well. Kind of reminds me of a Dyson in that regard, like an old DC-14. And again, like all the machines of the time, whether it's a wind tunnel or a Power Force or Eureka, you can press the pedal a second time to get underneath items. Although it's not very easy to do. Sometimes it'll instead pop up the cleaner head, which is supposed to be a function to be able to lift it onto rugs, but it can be a little strange sometimes. But it can get decently low, but this whole midsection is pretty thick compared to other machines. And again, like the Panasonics and the Power Forces I like so much, you've got a side-mounted power switch, which I'm very much a fan of. But at the end of the day, for me, as much as I like this machine, realistically, what am I going to use instead? I know I'm going to use this, because it has a lot less rough edges. It has more attachment support. The bags and the belts, while they are still cheap for both machines, are easier to find and cheaper to find on this. It also has a shorter cleaning path width, which I prefer. And it's still a little bit lighter weight and a little bit easier to use. Although this obviously has much better build quality and much better cleaning performance, which are fundamentally very important. So, of course, it's going to be up to preference. One other thing that's nice about this is it does in fact use the same bags as the Panasonic machines, as well as the Cirrus machines as well. So if you have some Cirrus HEPA bags, at least this is my understanding of it, I have some but I haven't put one in here yet, they should be able to work. So you can run HEPA bags for relatively cheap. So that is nice. HEPA bags are always good if you can get them. Although, these paper bags, despite them being the same color as the garbage Febreze bags, these genuine Riccar EcoPure bags are actually very nice for default paper bags. Even though I don't usually like default paper bags, the Riccar genuine bags, much like the Panasonic genuine bags, despite them being paper, are actually a really nice bag, and they actually filter very finely. And honestly, good paper bags are really nice because They have the filtering advantage that makes them a lot closer to HEPA, to the point where it's not as big of a deal to upgrade to HEPA. But then you also have the environmentally friendly factor of paper being a more recyclable material than the weird cloth synthetic compound that they use in HEPA bags. So from an environmental perspective, as you throw away many, many bags, that could be a selling point for this, is the fact that the genuine bags, while expensive, are at least better for the environment since they are paper. So there is that as well. This was a strange review, just like a lot of my reviews, but I'm sure you guys are used to that at this point. I kind of jumped all over the place. But to recap, this machine is quiet, it cleans well, it's built in the US, which is fantastic, has a robust support network, and these are very cheap to find secondhand or even refurbished. Despite the fact that these were expensive when they were new, they have very poor resale value, unlike a Dyson or a Miele or a Sebo. So you can definitely get one of these for super cheap. And the fact that they're not versatile, and the fact they're not for bare floors, is definitely a negative, but it means that if you're open to using a second bag machine to cover your bare floors, or if you have a cordless for it, then this is potentially an option if you want something a bit nicer than a Walmart machine, but that's still very familiar. So that's going to be the main lane that this machine operates in, as well as the current Spirit. I don't really think the current Spirit has much of a place in today's market, because I feel like if you're going to be spending that much on a vacuum at MSRP, that you really should be expecting more feature-wise. And I think the vast majority of consumers are, and unfortunately that's why Sharks are so popular, because they offer a lot of features that you don't get from other more boutique brands in the same or even a greater price range. And that's just the reality that the vacuum industry needs to address if they want to have any shot at cutting into Shark's market share. But the entire industry pretty much doesn't acknowledge that, and it's why these machines are, yes, popular, but ultimately declining in popularity, even with the new Spirit. And unfortunately, I do think that does spell a bad omen for the Spirit as it relaunches, because the demand just isn't going to be as great as it once was for these old school Vibrances. A lot of that market has unfortunately dried up, and local vacuum stores and the industry at large need to do a better job at articulating why these machines are better, and at the end of the day, they need to make a machine that consumers actually want. Because at the end of the day, most consumers don't want this. They want a machine that, yes, is built well and lasts a long time, but more importantly has the features they want. Because at the end of the day, this is the sad reality, if they want a machine with less features, they're going to spend less money. And that's just the way they see it. That's just the way the industry is going, which does make me very nervous for the future of the Spirits, and of course the older Vibrances that are still kicking around. Because this is a great machine, but how many customers will actually appreciate it? That's the main question that you have to ask. So anyways, on that strangely dire note and a relatively pessimistic view of the industry, let's go ahead and give this nice, smooth, quiet beast a run. Alright. That's pretty much that. I think I talked about pretty much everything. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, be sure to drop those in the comments below. And let me know your thoughts on this machine, again, in the comments below. Do you think I was correct about my sort of assessment of this, or do you think I'm wrong? I don't know. It's kind of interesting because people don't really talk about these too often. People talk a lot about the what are they called? The two-motor uprights. They talk a lot about the tandem airs. That's what they're called. People talk a lot about the tandem airs, and then people also sometimes talk about the super lights. Sometimes the R25s. I feel like people don't ever talk about the Vibrance, which I guess makes sense because it's the most basic, boring, rudimentary machine in the lineup. Even with the new Spirit relaunch, there hasn't been much chatter about it. Just some people saying, "Oh, it's coming back," and then people being like, "Oh, cool," and that's pretty much it. So again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Anyways, this is Intellitech Studios signing out. Have a good one. Peace.